The patrons have spoken and they've given us the Razzle, the Dazzle, the Salazzle. This intriguing Alolan Pokemon has intriguing inspirations from salamanders, combining the poison of those that exist in real life and the fire of those that appear in myths. It is also a type of lizard known as a whiptail, which have a mostly female population. Therein lies the basis for why male Salandit cannot evolve and only female Salandit can become Salazzle, which are only female. They are often found in caves with harems of male Salandit. Thanks, Pokemon lore. Anyway, today we're exploring if Salazzle sizzled in the competitive scene. And so, we ask, how good was Salazzle actually? And in this video, we'll be going over these competitive formats. A first glance at Salazzle leaves a lot to like. It's got a unique stab combination that's nicely complementary. In addition to the wide range of super effective coverage between them, Fire roasts the Steel's immune to its poison stab, while hitting most poisons and grounds quite hard as well. While Poison has useful neutral coverage against fires, waters, and dragons that would resist fire, especially when both stab moves have strong base power and are coming from Salazzle's solid special attack. With an amazing speed stat to match, base 117 puts it ahead of base 115, who are considered very fast already. Think the known speedsters Starmie and Raikou, as well as Gen 7 debutant Zygarde 10%. This distinction even means that Salazzle outruns Mega Rayquaza, not to brag or anything. Aiding it further in the role of fast special attacker is its access to Nasty Plot, giving its power an excellent boost. What really stands out about Salazzle though is its corrosion ability, as unique as it is excellent in enabling it to poison even those types that are usually immune to the status, Steel and Poison, and indeed, this is what led it to being tried a few times in the early stages of Gen 7 OU. We weren't going to get very far with Nasty Plot Salazzle. Its power was nice, but not exactly devastating by OU standards, meaning that the effort to get it on the field wasn't necessarily going to wield many results. Plus, both stabs were completely blanked by Heatran, and even slotting Hidden Power Ground last wasn't going to change the fact that it was also devoured by other tier standards in Garchomp and Tyranitar. Even if you did try some janky Hidden Power magic and managed to roll the right matchup, Salazzle was effortlessly going to get revenge killed by Greninja, Tapu Koko, and every Scarfer thanks to its poor bulk and plethora of weaknesses. However, it wasn't with Nasty Plot that Salazzle developed a reputation as a niche but viscerally unpleasant Pokemon to face. With Substitute, Toxic, and Protect, it was a vicious stall machine, being able to Toxic everything, then sit back and watch them flail until they were KO'd. Have fun watching your Heatran get Toxic and stalled out. Same goes for Toxapex. Incidentally, Salazzle's poison typing was quite nice for providing its team recourse against Toxapex's devastating Toxic Spikes. Its quadruple resist to Fairy and Grass were also helpful in assisting against Scarf Tapu Lele's Moonblast, the stabs from Tapu Bulu and Kartana, and it could even help ward off the devastating standard dual dance variants of Magearna, who use Fairy fighting coverage. Of course, this niche was more from the desire to try out one of the new Pokemon than any real place Salazzle had in the tier, which is why said niche was so short-lived. As cool as its tricks were, Salazzle was just too flawed defensively to make anything of note work, being so frail and having so many exploitable common weaknesses, very much including Stealth Rock, wasn't justifiable by what it could do, especially because of how badly it was blanked by the eventual metagame definer that was specially defensive Gliscor, who actively relished in being poisoned. Salazzle's stats didn't let it keep up much in UU either, so it wasn't really seen outside the occasional fringe use, not at all part of the tier, but that was just fine because Salazzle found its real home in RU, and there its impact cannot be overstated. From day one, it was one of the most elite Pokemon around and was considered by many to be the very best of the best. Early on, players were still trying out sub-toxic corrosion sets a la OU, sometimes throwing Disable into the mix to try and flip the matchup against Pokemon with only one move to threaten it by locking it out of said move. But these sets' reliance on safely getting that sub up made them inconsistent, and the fierce power of the Nasty Plot set quickly established itself as the go-to standard. Both of Salazzle's stabs ripped through the tier, made especially dangerous when powered up by their corresponding Z crystals. Acid Downpours was generally preferred to let it blast through waters like Milotic and Blastoise, as well as other fire checks like Diancie, Thorlax, and Goodra. Fire Blast's higher base power and greater spam ability meant it was Lazzle's go-to, and going with Poisium's Z supported that best. However, Infernal Overdrive's raw strength was a strong option as well. To make things even scarier, Salazzle's last move slot was quite flexible and limited its answers even further. With Hidden Power Grass, Gastrodon, Quagsire, and Seismitoad were completely invalidated, while also letting Salazzle actually do something to its best counter, Gigalith. Meanwhile, Hidden Power Ice decked Dragons in Flygon, Tyrantrum, and Noivern, mostly the former two, since Noivern's Stealth Rock weakness and neutrality to Sludge Wave meant it was hardly the most comfortable switching in. Speaking of the many switches Salazzle forced, it also meant Substitute was an excellent option on it. It took away the opponent's ability to safely pivot into one stab move, and was especially nasty at capitalizing on someone planning to sacrifice a slower Pokemon to it before bringing in that revenge killer. Salazzle could really run whatever it wanted. Taunt really let it clamp down on passive defensive teams, blocking everything from Defog to Recovery, while Knockoff ensured nothing coming into it would be able to heal with leftovers. This was especially nice for the lefties reliant Gigalith, and it utterly ruined Assault Vest Slowking. Speaking of these last two checks, you could even go with good old Toxic in that slot, could also hinder them greatly. This amazing versatility greatly enhanced the basic tenets of why Salazzle was such a dangerous threat. It was so strong and so fast in general, and especially for how strong it was, that its presence was one of the most significant reasons Choice Scarfers were nearly mandatory in RU, because options to go first against it otherwise were pretty minimal, and you're certainly not walling Salazzle with any consistency. Its great special attack and nasty plot meant if its stabs were hitting neutrally, they were probably deleting the opponent, especially with the Z Crystal providing extra push against that one Pokemon capable of not collapsing otherwise. Plus, its typing, rife with weaknesses alongside its characteristic frailty though it was, actually allowed Salazzle some crucial advantages too. Its ability to so effectively take on fairies and grasses as well as steels was superb in giving it opportunity to set up. Getting such opportunity against three of the most important types around was major. Its toxic immunity also meant one wasn't able to put it on a timer like they might normally do with other such boosting threats. Nasty Plot wasn't the only great Salazzle set either. Eventually, Choice Scarf was discovered as an absolutely excellent set. Though scarfing such a fast Pokemon may seem like a waste, it was precisely the superb speed stat that endowed Salazzle with unique revenge killing capabilities against even spectacularly fast boosted threats like Chlorophyll Venusaur and Shell Smash Barbarcool. Alternatively, it could opt for Hidden Power Ice instead of Grass, allowing it to pick off Dragon Dance Zygarde 10% and Flygon, as well as Noivern. Being able to outspeed Zygarde 10% after a boost was just incredible. Isn't losing out on revenge killing Barbarcool terrible though? But Salazzle doesn't have to choose. If it's running HP Ice, it can simply set Foul Play into its moveset to put a boosted Barb away. Plus, in the late game, Scarflazzle was lights out in general, since no other Scarfer even came close to its speed, letting it spam those stabs to victory against offense. Whether it was scarfing or plotting though, Salazzle was one of the most defining faces of RU, consistently one of its best performers, with a serious case for a position at the very best Pokemon in the metagame, and it held that distinction through the entire generation. Salazzle wasn't your standard VGC Pokemon. Its massive weakness to spread moves alongside its well-known frailty was issue enough, but then there was also the fact that it wasn't exactly packing heart-stopping power. However, for all its faults, it was still incredibly fast, and its strong stab combination had its usage, especially with how it threatened the daylights out of every single Tapu as well as the near-immortal Celesteela. But beyond that, it had an incredible double support move in Fake Out. This alongside Focus Sash helping assuage its frailty and letting it make the most out of its capacity to hit the opponent hard allowed it to find a niche and smattering of placements throughout the generation, as it was effective at supporting a fast, frail monster like Pheromosa. Most of these placements didn't come in 2017 though. Those were limited to 3, James Eakes, Federico Toronto, and Phil Nguyen at 2nd, 1st, and 6th at the Anaheim Regionals, the Buenos Aires Special Event, and Brisbane Regionals respectively. Then in 2018, Kyle Livinghouse reached 4th at the Roanoke Regionals, and Jamie Boyd actually used Salazzle at Worlds to reach 27th. Salazzle really took off in 2019, well, relatively anyway. It was now able to support the beast of the restricted metagame, while the limited nature of the formats, restricting Z Crystals for example, meant other Pokemon weren't at full capacity, meaning Salazzle effectively got a little bump up. However, it continued to succeed even afterwards. It also helped that its stab Sludge Bomb threatened Xerneas, and its fire stab was powered up by Groudon Sun. Congratulations to these players for making Salazzle work on their team. However, Salazzle's biggest advocate by far, though, was again Jamie Boy, who used it to success throughout the entire season. He reached 22nd, 3rd, 8th, and 10th at the Harrogate Regionals, Cannes Special Event, Bolzano Special Event, and Sheffield Regionals respectively. And for the grand finale, he reached 9th at Worlds with it. Congrats to Jamie for almost single-handedly proving Salazzle to be worthwhile in the 2019 VGC metagame. Salazzle bemoaned the loss of its beloved Z Crystal in Generation 8, as well as its loss of hidden power, but what it lost in coverage and direct bursts of strength, it gained in greater opportunity to unleash its base level of power thanks to the addition of the heavy-duty boots, which nullified its long load weakness to Stealth Rock. This increased its potential utility to the point where, even as it fell to NU, it was simultaneously quite good in RU and UU. We'll start with UU, where Salazzle was at its most limited, which makes sense considering it was NU after all, but still had a legitimate niche. Its primary strength was its superb ability to apply passive damage to Pokemon that are famously difficult to wear down, Naiho Ego and Galarian Slowbro, thanks to corrosion allowing it to toxic them. With Knockoff, it hindered their longevity even further. This enabled unique avenues for progress making, both in the team builder and the battle. Additionally, its speed was utterly stellar. UU was characterized by many top tier Pokemon hanging at base 115 in Raikou, Starmie, Azelf, and Zygarde 10%. These were among the fastest around, getting the jump on other fast staples like Keldeo, and Salazzle outsped even these base 115s. Thus, despite its frailty, the plethora of switch moves to get in on alongside boots to ignore hazards gave it plenty of opportunity to act as a sort of utility threat, which battered pretty much everything with its dual stabs, Corrosion Toxic, and Knockoff. Having said that, its frailty prevented it from being too common, as it wasn't going to contribute much to a team's defenses, but its value was unique and it was highly effective if wielded correctly. It was a similar song and dance in RU. With Toxic and Knockoff, Salazzle baited in and severely hindered Milotic, Guzzlord, Rhyperior, and the single best Pokemon in the tier, Flygon, while also using its superb speed to get the jump on the familiar face that was Raikou, already considered very fast. Despite the irritation of trying to spread Toxic with Magic Guard Reuniclus around, Salazzle wasn't too deterred. Reuniclus didn't like Knockoff, and it really didn't enjoy having to heal off Salazzle's stabs. Those stabs generally threatened a great deal of the tier's most common significant Pokemon too. Consider how effortlessly Salazzle cuts down the likes of Togekiss, Registeel, Celebi, and Metagross. Once again, its place was limited overall due to its frailty, along with the Reuniclus factor being particularly obnoxious for a Pokemon whose appeal was largely spamming Toxic more freely than anything else. But Salazzle was a useful tool that rewarded intelligent use in RU. In its true tier of NU though, Salazzle was excellent once again. No Magic Guard around, not a ton of Regenerator to minimize the impact of its assault either. Fire Blast ripped through a great deal of the metagame, making it incredibly spammable, and the few Pokemon that could take it had their switches incredibly telegraphed, letting Salazzle once again turn the tables on the likes of Guzzlord, Milotic, Talonflame, Gastrodon, Gigalith, or Aerodactyl with hindering effect of Toxic and or Knockoff. Salazzle was a particularly excellent hazard abuser, considering how easily it landed knockoffs on heavy-duty boots targets. This time around, Salazzle wasn't as dedicated to the utility of both Toxic and Knockoff. It would use one, but it also recognized the huge destructive potential of Nasty Plot. Thus, Toxic or Knockoff were used not just to enable its teammates, but its own sweeping capabilities. Once it got Nasty Plot under its belt, Salazzle was cleaning up with efficiency, recalling the previous generation of RU. Sometimes it needed to cause a lot of damage in a shorter period of time than the slow burn of Toxic and or Knockoff, which needed many turns to accumulate. With just one turn to grab +2 though, it was bowling over the likes of the usual effective tanks in Stakataka and Mudsdale. Overall, Salazzle was a great NU Pokemon, capping off another successful generation for it. Salazzle's VGC presence dropped off a cliff in Generation 8. Its stats and move pool were just not impressive enough to even catch most players' eye. It was no longer a new Pokemon. Had it been introduced in Gen 8, it surely had been tried more. As such, Pokemon generally get a bit of a usage boost when they're new. But now that it was a known commodity, the player base also knew running Salazzle wasn't going to be as impactful as other options. Oh yeah, and there was also the minor detail that if you wanted to run a fire type with Fake Out, you were going to run Incineroar, which most players were doing already. Yeah, Salazzle did have some placements, at least in 2020 before Incineroar returned, as Diego Ferreira reached 14th at the Oceania Regionals and 4 players used Salazzle at the Malmo Regionals, but none of them reached the top 32. So we don't have data other than the fact that Salazzle was indeed used. Then in 2021, Cadet reached 26 at the second Hatterene Series tournament with Salazzle. And that's it. That's all Salazzle did VGC-wise in Gen 8. Yeah, pretty deflating after its solid debut. Gen 9 has unleashed unholy amounts of power creep on the world, so Salazzle has actually dropped to PU. But before we get to that, we must mention how it's still actually quite decent in RU. It is highly niche as a threat in its own right, as it's held back by the incredibly popular Assault Vest Cyclozar, but that's also its niche. Toxic threatens so many of the tier staples in Pheasantipity, Hippowdon, Rhyperior, and Slowbro, so Cyclozar is forced to switch in, at which point Salazzle can knock off the Assault Vest, which opens up opportunities both for its own Sludge Bombs and for its teammates. Of course, Salazzle's frailty holds it back, as is the fact that it's checked by many common top tier Pokemon in Barraskewda, Scarf Gengar, Scarf Mienshao, Prankster Thunderwave Thundurus, and Cyclozar itself, but the unique threat it provides, once again, rewards the enterprising player. In PU, it's a similar story once again. Salazzle naturally threatens a great deal of common top tier staples like Wolchien, Screamtail, Decidueye, and Florges, and its Fire Blast is incredibly spammable, even into a tier that generally has more bulk than past iterations of even something like RU or NU, let alone PU. Of course, Milotic and Gastrodon stand in the way, but once again, Salazzle loves putting them on a timer and then hanging back until it can unleash the full brunt of its stabs. Late in the game, it's an utter terror, and it is not at all uncommon to see Salazzle finishing proceedings off. The tier's general bulk level means that many things can take one hit from Salazzle, but very few Pokemon outspeed it, and even fewer can take 2 hits from it. So if Salazzle gets in a position where it's threatening something out, an incoming Pokemon is probably getting dropped one way or another. If it elects to run Nasty Plot, it's particularly lights out should it grab one on a switch. Yes, it has its flaws. Its frailty means that if a Pokemon terrestrializes on it defensively, Salazzle's probably not surviving the return hit. Furthermore, it has to complete with more defensively complete fire types in Arcanine, Delphox, and Rotom Heat. Yeah, that's the PU tier. However, Salazzle's flaws are nowhere near enough to hold it back from the strong position it holds in the metagame, making for its 3rd successful generation. It's been similarly bleak for VGC Salazzle in Gen 9. For some strange reason, it had a burst of usage at the 2023 San Diego Regionals, with Marco Martinez being the highest of them at 13th place. Something similar took place at the Liverpool Regionals, with these players on screen. However, outside these 2 events, Salazzle has been non-existent, which is unsurprising given its ever outclassed offense and support profile. And that's it. So how good was Salazzle actually? Well, it's been an excellent lower tier Pokemon. In its debut generation of Sun and Moon, it was arguably always the best Pokemon in RU, the face of the tier. It was downright excellent, utilizing its unique stab combination alongside great special attack, speed, and Nasty Plot. Once it lost Z Crystals in Gen 8, it took on more of a utility role, abusing its most iconic trait, Corrosion Toxic, alongside Knockoff to spread residual damage all over the place. This, alongside its great speed and immediate power, made it a great utility Pokemon in all of UU, RU, and NU. Currently in Gen 9, it is great once again in PU, while maintaining an RU niche, particularly impressive considering the power creep it's up against. It hasn't done much in VGC after its decent debut, but hey, it doesn't have to. Overall, Salazzle has had quite a successful, uniquely interesting competitive history. Thanks for watching, everyone, and thank you so much to our patrons for continued support of our videos. And if you want to become a patron, you can go check it out in the description below. And thank you so much to our platinum tier patrons. Thank you so much to Raven Daytona Ring, Sorazan Croxon, Stoneface Colin, Bingleton, Ray, Daniel Isbeast, Glitcherton, Alex Sabo, Funky, Skylaria, and Jack G for their support of our videos. But also, thank you to everyone watching as well. And if you liked the video and you want to see more, be sure to subscribe to False Swipe Gaming for more weekly Pokemon content. And in the comments, I want to know, what do you think about competitive Salazzle? How would you buff it? Whatever it is, let us know in the comments. And follow my crew on these social media platforms. And that's all I got. See you next time, everyone.